So, welcome to this session where I'm going to be talking about this topic, tips for handling sensory overload. So, someone in my Facebook group posted the following. They said there's been an increase in the amount of super bright LED lights in the neighbourhood. They hurt my brain when I look out at night and trigger my sympathetic nervous system. I've been getting lots of practice trying to quiet it down. I don't go to very many places, but all the stores and public gathering spaces seem to be more full of ever hyper stimulating images and video displays that are constantly flickering and changing, and noises and muzak. My old self wants to simply stay away. My recovering self wants to find ways to experience them without triggering the sympathetic nervous system. So if you are watching live, do say hi, just let me know you can see me and hear me. So I'm going to share some strategies for dealing with sensory overload. And I feel for this person, and I feel for you if this is your experience. I'll talk a bit more about my experience when I had ME of sensory sensitivity. So the strategies I'm sharing are shared with love. I am going to share these ideas based on the idea that people haven't done brain training. So if you have done some form of brain training, consider what strategies that you know already that you can apply to this situation. And so I've got a hi from Catherine, hi from Vivian. So thanks for letting me know you're here and watching. So why is this important to address this issue? Well, obviously, what this person's just described is unpleasant. And unless this person wants to divulge that it's them who shared this, this post, I won't mention them by name. So it's unpleasant. It can be limiting, as this person's saying. It's worth considering that some of us, many of us maybe with ME/CFS, tend to be more sensitive. Okay, now there's a question whether that sensitivity is innate, whether it's kind of nature, or whether it's nurture. Okay, so for instance, if people have had adverse childhood experiences, there is evidence that shows that those people are more sensitive. Their nervous system is more dysregulated. Okay, so that's just something to consider, whether the experience of trauma, whether it's small t trauma, as Gabor Mate calls it, or big T trauma. So big T trauma is emotional physical abuse. Small t trauma is more about neglect, not getting our needs met. Okay, so there are some other factors to consider, which we'll get into in a minute. But I'd like you just consider, someone shared this analogy with me of thinking about what type of car you are. Okay, bear with me, this will make sense. So consider a Mini. I've got a picture of the film, what's it called? It's a film with Michael Caine. The name escapes me, it'll come back to me, I'm sure. Let me know if in the chat. I've got a poster downstairs, I can't think of the name of this film. But basically it's about these people doing a bank job, and they're driving around Italy in Minis. At one point they're going downstairs. So consider those Minis are built to kind of go across fields and, endure a lot of rough treatment. Okay, and some people are built like that, and that's how they live their life. Okay, but other people are more like a Rolls Royce. They require a different environment. They might even have tinted windows, air conditioning. They drive at a more regular speed. Okay, so just consider that. What car, if you were a car, what kind of car would you be? Would you be a Mini that's rough and ready, or would you be more like that Rolls Royce that needs proper care and attention? Okay, so the core idea I want to share is that I think it is possible to reduce or eliminate the discomfort from stimuli that might be light, noise, or even smell. I want to tell you the story of Milton Erikson, who's known as the grandfather of hypnotherapy. And when he was young, he decided to do an experiment where he went to a foundry where they made bells. And it was an incredibly noisy environment. You know, the noise, he said, was deafening. But what was interesting is he observed that people were just standing talking to each other as if they were just in a normal environment. And he was having real trouble. So Andy's saying here, just well done for making it, Andy. Nice to have you with us, and nice to have everyone else. And Sankar, hi, nice to see you too. So thanks for letting me know you're here. If you haven't already, do say hi. Lovely to have all of you with me. So anyway, so Milton Erikson, he decided to ask the foreman whether he could stay in the foundry for a couple of nights, you know, which is obviously a curious request. And the foreman said, sure, just go and put your sleeping bag over there. I think this was in the 50s or 60s. And he slept there for a couple of nights and stayed there. And what he found is by the end of a couple of days that he'd become acclimatized to the sound, okay? He could actually have a conversation with someone speaking in a normal way. He was able to hear the other person and they were able to hear him. So consider what that tells us about the power of the mind. You know, when I moved into a flat many years ago, there was a clock tower in the garden, and I said to the landlord when I went to see the place, does the clock chime every hour? And he very cleverly managed to change the subject, and I forgot about it and didn't get an answer to my question. Well, I found out the first night because every hour the clock chimed and it woke me up. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a terrible place to live if this, you know, clock is going off every hour. But after the first night, I didn't wake up. So my brain had just decided that I was safe and didn't need to pay attention to that sound. So just consider what those experiences, those stories tell us about our ability to adjust. Now, after I recovered from ME/CFS, I started going to festivals, and I've always been completely fine with the level of sound. Okay, but a couple of times I've been to parties or gigs where the noise level was very high. So, for instance, many years ago, we organised a party for my mum, and there was a band, and the music was very loud, and I was standing right at the back of the hall, and I said to my brother-in-law, I think that's really loud. You know, is that your sense? Because he works in the music industry. And he said, yes, it is. So I actually had to go and tell them to turn it down, and they turned the volume down so that it was at a comfortable level, okay? And about a month ago, I was at an 80s gig, and again, the music was really loud. My friends weren't really bothered by it because they'd been drinking for 3 or 4 hours, so they were a bit immune to it. But I don't really drink, and I just thought, wow, that is very loud. Now, I did get used to it, but I was having to raise my voice, and I think I got a bit of a sore throat from just having to speak very loud. And I did get used to it, and we did take some time to actually go to another bar where the sound volume was less high. But as I say, I kind of got used to it. But in an ideal world, I would have liked it like at least 25% lower. And I think if the volume was turned down, you would still be able to hear it very clearly. So as I say, there might be some innate sensitivity, might be related to trauma, but I think there's something else we need to consider, which is that when we are in stress, as you know, this activates the fight-flight response. And this is a very useful response to a perceived or real threat, because what happens is our senses are heightened. Our sense of sight, hearing and smell in particular are more sensitive because these senses are going to help us survive. Okay? Now, as you know, the fight-flight mechanism is designed to be a short-term response to potential threats. But in modern life, we as human beings can activate that fight-flight response more often than, for instance, our ancestors, who only activated it in those life-threatening situations. A saber-toothed tiger invaders, excuse me, because it helped them survive. Now, when I had ME/CFS, I realised that I was very sensitive to light, okay? And, bright lights literally hurt my eyes, hurt my brain. I was also sensitive to smell. I was very attuned to smell, so I could, like when my daughter was putting on a hairspray or whatever, the other side of the house, within literally a second or two, I could smell it. Now, that didn't trouble me too much. I wasn't, some people are so sensitive to smell, to perfume, it stops them from going out to parties, etc. Didn't really bother me, but the light was an issue. However, now I'm not really bothered by the light. I've actually got two lights right here, and they're very bright. And initially when I turn the lights on, it's like, oh, that's a bit bright. But after a while, I just get used to it, and I'm, it's not really affecting me. And I'll talk a bit about how I made that shift from being sensitive to the light in particular, to getting to the point where I wasn't sensitive. Now, the interesting thing that can happen, and I'll just go to my iPad to illustrate this point, is that we can develop a feedback loop. Okay, so what happens is that as I've just been talking about, we're in a state of stress. And as I've said, that stress heightens our sensitivity to light. That's supposed to be an eye. Might look like something else. It heightens our sensitivity to sound. I really probably shouldn't have tried to draw these things. Imagine that's an ear. And it heightens our sensitivity to smell. Imagine that's a nose. Okay, I'm getting you to really use your imagination here, okay? All right. So now we have that sensitivity, okay? And that is going to result in, when we experience the stimuli, that's going to result in more stress, okay? So that's creating a feedback loop. Now, in addition to that, if we've got the expectation, I'm going to be in this environment that is going to stimulate me, then we know from our understanding of the way the brain works that actually thinking about the stimulus can actually trigger that response. So that then feeds into this loop. Okay, does that make sense? Let me know in the chat whether that makes sense. So we can create this feedback loop. And an example of that is when I had ME/CFS, at a certain point, I would use my friend's computer and I couldn't look at a computer screen for more than 15 minutes. I'd develop brain fog, I'd feel a bit dizzy. And so there was the stimulus, the light, the flickering screen, and my experience was I'd get brain fog. I also wonder whether there became an expectation that would happen. So first of all, I'm getting the response, and that puts me in a stress mode. Again, that heightens my sensitivity. But then there's also the expectation, okay, that this is going to happen. That puts me in a state of stress. Again, that means my senses are heightened, and that is more likely to happen. So people are saying, yes, it's interesting. Yes, it does. Good. Glad. Thanks for the feedback. Appreciate that. All right. So the question is, how do we shift that? Okay. So if I was working with someone who's experiencing these things, the first thing I'd want to do is to just get a really clear picture of their experience and to assess what strategies they've currently got in place, and also to invite them to do an assessment. And this is an assessment you can all do. I've created this training, which is called the audit training, where you score a number of metrics, including health, compassion towards yourself, percentage of thoughts that are calming, nurturing, supportive, and some other metrics, okay? And I also get people to kind of do an audit of what their day looks like. And by doing those two things, it can give you some insights into areas that you can work on to actually start to reduce your stress levels. So, for example, if someone recognizes that their compassion score out of 10 is 3, with 10 being compassion levels of the Dalai Lama, then it's clear they can work on their compassion. If their compassion score is low, that means that's going to cause them stress. If they improve that score, they're reducing their stress levels. So that's the first thing I want to do if I'm working with someone, is just to really get a clear picture of where they are, where the levers are, where the opportunities are to reduce stress levels, okay? To increase calm, to help the body activate the parasympathetic nervous system response. Because when we're in that state, the body does healing, okay? So that's the first thing I would do. Let's just go to the iPad. Is I would do an assessment, okay? The second thing I'd be interested in is to look at their management strategies, okay? So, for example, when I talk about management, sometimes I hear people say, oh, you shouldn't use management strategies because then you're telling your mind and your body that you're in danger. What I would say is this, you know, if I go to a cafe, which I did do with my mum, and the music was very loud, the cafe was very loud because it had stone brick walls, and it didn't bother me too much, but for my mum it was too loud. So I just said to the staff, look, my mum's finding it really hard to actually hear herself think, is it possible just to turn the music down a bit? And they were like, yeah, sure. And instantly my mum was more relaxed. I felt more relaxed because the environment was a little bit more conducive, okay? So actually I think that it's completely reasonable to look at strategies which are management strategies. They might be temporary strategies, okay? So for example, when I had that sensitivity, maybe I could have worn blue blocker glasses when I was looking at a computer screen, okay? And I'll share my strategies in a moment, okay? But we can consider these things as temporary. What is going to create a feeling of safety and ease, okay, in your physiology? So certainly turning the music down in that situation just created more ease, all right? If you are in situations where you are in public and there is muzak, there is bright lights, what management strategies could you adopt? So pop in the chat. So Catherine says, I have asked people to do that at the hairdressers and it's very helpful. Yeah, because sometimes people aren't aware, they just get used to that level and they don't realise that actually it's bothering someone else. And if, for instance, you're a hairdresser and you want to keep happy customers, then there's no hardship in just accommodating a customer and making their experience a bit more comfortable. But consider, what things might you employ, what strategies might you employ? Sometimes when I go to festivals, and I'm quite lucky that I'm able to go backstage sometimes, they give you, or there's a little box with ear defenders, and they're really good ones. They're kind of industrial ear defenders, so I keep a few for when my neighbours are noisy. All right, so we put them in our ears and they deaden the sound a bit. Okay, so is that something you could do, or could you wear, especially if it's winter coming up, wear some mufflers that you can just put over your ears, okay, just to reduce the noise? Could you wear sunglasses, blue blocker light glasses, which are just going to reduce the stimulation? Okay, so this person did say, you know, when I look out at night, I see the bright lights. Now we know that that bright light is going to hinder the production of melatonin. It's going to interrupt the sleep cycle. So a couple of years ago, I just became more aware of that. And at night, I do soften the lights. I don't really like bright lights at night, you know, when it's coming up to bedtime. So I tend to, if I'm in the kitchen, I just turn some of the lights off. When I have a bath, I turn the bathroom light off and I have candles, or I just put the light on my torch on. A friend of mine suggested I get a infrared light, or you can buy little red torches, which are the light's just much softer. It's much easier on the eye. Okay, and I feel that is good to help my body prepare for sleep. So if you know, this person says I look out at night, see the bright lights. I mean, for me that's pollution, having all that bright light, and you know, it's a shame that people don't have more sensitivity to others. However, I get it. Some people have those bright lights for security. But I would, you know, I'd avoid looking out at night, or I'd wear some glasses so that it's going to not have the same impact, because, you know, my system doesn't really like that. Okay. So consider, what are those management strategies that you can employ? Okay. So the third thing is employing mind-body approaches. Okay? So when people do my building resilience training, I'm actually teaching them mind-body strategies. I'm teaching them strategies so that they can soothe themselves. Okay? So if we consider that some of the sensitivity may be related to trauma, and our nervous system did become dysregulated, then strategies to soothe our nervous system can be really valuable. So, but I've actually created a playlist. So if you go to my channel, depicted by that red rectangle, okay, and you go to the playlists, okay, I've created a playlist called Sensory Strategies, and in that playlist is a video on breathing exercises. There's videos on vagal toning and vagal exercises, stretching exercises, just to help soothe your mind and body. Okay, so check out that playlist. All right, now if you do want to go deeper with this, if you've got access to the Building Resilience course, check it out, because I've added new content. But as I said earlier, I do believe it's possible to reduce and eliminate the discomfort, to solve that sensitivity in a sense. As I say, some of it might be related to trauma. And what we know is that trauma can result in us developing a sensitive nervous system, okay? And it can also it can result in us developing beliefs that can actually feed into that sensitivity. So, for example, I used to be very sensitive in terms of other people. I worried what other people thought. Okay, so that could trigger my nervous system, put my physiology in a state of stress. I've learned to change some of those beliefs that I had about myself and rewired those beliefs so that I'm less sensitive to what other people think. Hopefully, I still am a sensitive person in terms of being thoughtful and caring about what other people think. All right. But I'm less sensitive and I get triggered less. I've still got work to do on that. It's very interesting during COVID when I got into conversations with people. We had very different views about how COVID was managed. And I would find those conversations quite triggering because I was still caring too much about what other people think. And I realised I had a bit more work to do on that, and to develop more robustness in saying, this is my point of view. I'm happy to be challenged. I'm happy to get into discussion, but I'm not really going to tolerate, kind of destructive conversation, people being judgmental and dismissive of another person's point of view. If we're not having a respectful conversation, I'm out. Okay, so I had to say that, particularly to one friend who can get a bit aggressive when we have a different point of view. All right. So when I train people, I'm really teaching people how to break that stimulus response pattern, and also breaking the stimulus expectation response pattern. And I do that by teaching people how to connect to that part of themselves that has the capacity for wisdom, for pragmatism, for acceptance, for calm, and other qualities, trust, etc. Okay? Teach people how to connect to that part of themselves and take care of the part of them that is being triggered. Okay? We can learn to interrupt those responses and choose new responses and create new default responses. So I'll give you a practical example of that. So when I had this sensitivity to looking at a computer screen, couldn't look at a computer screen for more than 15 minutes. Excuse me. What I recognised is there was a stimulus response relationship, and there was an expectation response relationship. So the first thing I did is practice just getting into a calm state. Okay, and then I approached looking at computers in a gradual way. All right, so first of all, I just look at a computer for 5 minutes, and I would do that a number of times. And what I was teaching my mind-body physiology is that I was safe. Okay, and as a result, my physiology calmed down. All right, and by doing that over time, my whole system was more relaxed. So I wasn't activating the fight-flight response. I wasn't activating that sensitivity of my senses. And over time, I was able to just look at a computer screen for longer and longer. I now look at a computer screen for too long. I spend, probably 8 hours a day working, looking at my computer screen. I do a lot of sessions online and some sessions face-to-face at a clinic, but I do spend a lot of time looking at a computer. So I've gone from 15 minutes to 8 hours. All right, let me just share a little concept which I find helpful. So on this vertical we've got motivation, and on this horizontal we've got ability. Okay, and this is called the B map. Okay, hi Lynn, you're late. No problem whatsoever. Okay, now consider that if my motivation to look at a computer is high, because I like looking at a computer, watching a film or whatever, but my ability is low, then it's not a good idea to spend a long time, let's say spending an hour looking at a computer. That's not going to happen. If my motivation is high, but actually I say, you know what, I'm going to look at a computer screen for 5 minutes, my ability to do that is much higher. So now we're above the line. Okay, my motivation is high. My ability, I've increased my ability by reducing the time. Okay, now if I stick to that for a little while, then as I said, my physiology is going to calm down, and over time I can build that up. Okay, so I invite you to consider how you can apply that concept to your situation. You know, it might be just to say, okay, I'm just going to walk into a building where a shop or whatever, there's music or whatever, and just for a minute, and then I'm going to come out again. First of all, I'm going to get myself into that calm, relaxed state. I'll go in just for a minute, come out again, and just check in. How do I feel? How does my physiology feel? I might do that a few times. Another example of that is I had a client who did find going into supermarkets too challenging because there was a lot of stimulation. Okay, there was the noise, there was the music or whatever, there was the people. And again, so she just did it in a gradual way. She just started small, went in for a minute, got herself into a calm state first, went in, came out, thought, yeah, I can do that. I survived that. And she just gradually increased it over time. So let's pause there and let's find out what is your takeaway, your key takeaway from the conversation so far. Just let me know in the chat. I can see there's quite a few people watching. If you haven't said hi, feel free to say hello. Just be interested to know, what's your key takeaway? What's your key action? What's one thing that you could implement from this conversation? So let me know in the chat if you're watching live or watching the replay. So Lynn says doing stuff step by step. Excellent. All right. So if you want to know more about the building resilience training, then just put the word video in the chat and I'll send you a link to a video where you can find out more. And if you do at any point want to have a free chat, it's no obligation to be a client. Happy just to chat to you, maybe do that audit that I talked about and help you identify a few areas you can work on. Just put the word chat in the comments and happy to arrange that. So Catherine says, yes, gradually increasing exposure helps. I've been doing this on the computer. Excellent. Viv says, I think the building up to do things a bit at a time. Perfect. Okay, so great that you've got some takeaways and thank you for sharing them. If you've got any questions, get in touch. Maybe let's finish with a very brief relaxation. If you'd like that, pop a yes in the chat. So Catherine's saying also changing expectations. Yeah, that's very important because our expectations can actually have an impact. Lily says, hi, it's 5 a.m. where I am. My takeaway, earplugs. Perfect. So thank you for sharing that. Sankar, my question is, if we build up our ability to do things step by step, will it result in a complete cure in course of time? So what I want to know, Sankar, is what's the specific issue that you have in mind there. I never say to someone, I promise, I guarantee, that you can recover, because I haven't got a crystal ball. I don't think that's an ethical thing to say. But what I do say is I do think it is possible to make significant improvements. It is possible to recover. Consider that if it's not impossible, then it's 100% possible. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that answers your question. Lynn says, thanks. Yes. Okay, got a couple of yeses. So obviously happy to have a chat with you further about that, find out a bit more about your particular situation, help you identify some of the metrics that are things that you can influence to help you move forward. All right, but let's pause there. I invite you just to close your eyes. So Sanka says, for me, it's driving or grocery shopping or being able to work on my computer for longer without brain fog. All right, so yeah, I definitely suggest you think about what I've talked about in this video and start practicing those things. All right. Viv says, another thing I'm learning is to pull back on things to be able to move forward. Okay, yeah. All right, so Sanka says, sure, let's talk one-to-one. I look forward to that, Sanka. Yeah, so Viv, feel free to say a little bit more about that if you like. I'm guessing you're saying that sometimes maybe you push yourself a little bit too much. Is that right? So hold that thought for now. I invite you just to close your eyes right now, and you can just respond later if you want. I invite you just to close your eyes. Obviously, only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. Don't close your eyes if you're operating machinery, driving, or juggling knives or torches or whatever. So I invite you to take a breath in, breathe in through your nose, into your belly, and out of your nose, as long as that is comfortable. As you breathe in and out, just allow your out breath to be a little longer than your in breath. As you breathe in and out, just allow your mind and body and physiology to relax, soften, and let go. Just the right amount for you. As you breathe in and out, you might imagine your breath as a colour. Breathing in that colour, seeing it into your lungs, seeing that breath oxygenate your blood, and as your blood circulates around your system, it's nourishing all the cells in your body, allowing the cells to work efficiently, allowing your cells to produce energy, to release waste products that are circulated and filtered by your body. With each in-breath, just allowing your mind, your body, your physiology to calm and relax and soften just a little bit more, whatever feels right for you. I invite you just to consider that you can, from time to time, just pause a moment. Make yourself comfortable, either sitting or lying down. Just practicing this simple technique, if it feels right for you, or practicing any other technique you know. You might just do that every time you go to the bathroom afterwards. Every time you put the kettle on, you could just sit down and do a short relaxation to calm your physiology. Consider that by just doing that, you're training yourself to get even better at relaxing your mind, body, and physiology. I've got a number of free relaxation resources. So if you like those free resources, then get in touch. If you join my Facebook group, I can share some of those resources with you. Or you can send me an email. If you're watching on YouTube, do subscribe. Leave a comment if you found this video helpful. And do share with anyone who might find it helpful. I appreciate all your comments, so thanks to those of you who are giving me feedback. Really helps. It's really appreciated. So when you're ready, you can just bring yourself back. If you wish just to carry on relaxing, then for now keep your eyes closed until you're ready. But if you're ready, you can open your eyes. Feel free to let me know in the chat how you found that short relaxation exercise. So Vivian says yes in relation to pushing through, pulling back. Catherine says thank you. You are welcome, Catherine. Thank you too. All right, so keep going. I do believe it's possible to make progress towards your health goals. I do believe recovery is possible. Okay, so keep doing the stuff that you know is helpful. If you want any help with all of this, get in touch. Thanks for watching, everybody. Keep going. Bye for now.